All right, well, we do have 11:30 here, so we'll go ahead and get started while we get everyone into their seats here. Welcome to the Polk County Emergency Operations Center and our monthly Lunch and Learn. My name is Brett McIntyre. This is Dutch Geisinger, our Deputy Director. We'll go through our introductions here in just a minute, but first I'll give you kind of the lay of the land. Again, today we're going to be talking about event planning, safety, and security considerations. This is a training presentation that we like to give fairly regularly here around the metro. So Dutch gave this a few months ago to some of our event planning groups and vendors, and plenty of demand built up. So we decided to roll it out again today. We do have some ideas later on, maybe in the fall or next spring, as federal training dollars start flowing again to bring some more classes into Polk County again as we continue to have an ever expanding calendar of events and festivals all around the metro. So it's pretty much an evergreen topic that we're happy to provide some training and tips and considerations for you. Again, you can reach out at any time for more information. Once we get to the end of this presentation today, we'll take the recording, we'll clip it, we'll put it on our website so you can go back to and refer to it as needed, share it with anybody else in your department or your agency that you'd like to see it. We'll also have a copy of the slides up there as well. There'll be a few links that'll pop up here during the presentation to some worksheets and some other resources, and those will be online with our video that I will email out to all of our attendees and RSVPs that couldn't make it today as well. So that'll be coming to you as we get to the end of the day. Wake up my clicker here. In terms of our EOC, again, for those of you that haven't been here before or it's been a while, we do have a break room right here through the back door. If you need something to drink, through the back of the break room there in the hallway, there's a water bottle refilling station. There's a soda machine in there and a vending machine as well if you need a couple of snacks. Otherwise, we do have some coffee on the side of the room here for you. If you need the restrooms, you can go back out the way you came, take two lefts around the hallway, and on the back side of these two conference rooms, that's where you'll find the restrooms. If we have any emergencies today, we do have an AED right over there next to the coffee. We've got stop the bleed kits at the back of the EOC as well. If we'd have to evacuate, get out the way you came is the easiest route. If we can't go that way for any reason, we can head out the side exit here. That'll take us through public health and out the south side of the building. Don't expect any storms today, so I'll spare you the maze to get to the basement down through the hallway, but there are signs that would lead you that way if we needed to go that direction as well. Again, I said my name is Brett McIntyre. I'm part of our training and exercise piece of our program here at Polk County Emergency Management. So I try to arrange our lunch and learns, other trainings for agencies and partners around the county, and exercises as we go through that planning, training, and exercise schedule. Those are the kind of areas that I have fenced off under my purview. I do act as one of our duty officers, one of our 5 rotating duty officers each month that are on call 24/7 when we do have emergencies or other disasters that need our attention. I work with our active threat work group as well that provides training and expertise to our agencies, to schools, and to anybody really looking for training or outreach on that topic. I've been here for 3 years at Polk County Emergency Management. Before that, I spent 15 years at WHO TV and broadcast meteorology. And this is Dutch Geisinger, our Deputy Director. I'll hand it over to him to go through his resume.
I'm not going to read everything to you, but if you're doing math, I really am really old. So military background, I was law enforcement, went to state Homeland Security, and then was a federal agent for the U.S. Department of Homeland Security for about 6 years. Deputy director here now. I've been here for about 5 years, a little bit over that. So I do want to say that we're going to present some information today. This material is a summary of what's probably a 3 to 5 day class in most places. So we're going to give you some really high level stuff about safety and security as it relates to event planning. If you want more detail on it, we're happy to provide that as well. Just get a hold of us afterward. Grab one of our cards on the way out. We'll help you out with some of that information too.
Definitely something that, again, as I said earlier, we have more that we'll be trying to bring in here over the course of the next 6 to 12 months, and we'll share that out with you as well as it goes on forward. So again, this presentation, again, this has been a lot of Dutch's work at this point, and I am going to start to try to take a little bit of that from him as we go into our training steps here. So he will be adding some color to us as well today. But what we want to do for our presentation, our goals today, is kind of hit a couple of topics that really goes to setting up a successful event security posture as you get into your planning and how we really attack that. Proactive planning, comprehensive risk assessment, and interagency coordination are going to be kind of our three tent poles that we're going to go through in our slides here today. We'll take you through some of the different steps that really make each of those ticks and how they are kind of interconnected with each other that really help each other support a well-planned, secure event. So we'll start off, we do have some interactivity for you today. So if you've got your phones handy, you want to pull them out and take a scan of this QR code. We do have a couple of questions that we're going to give you here from time to time. Once you get it to open in your browser, it should remain up there. Once we get to the next slides with other questions, it'll advance automatically for you. But the first thing we want to do just to kind of break the ice is have you guys throw out a few ideas when you're planning an event. Whether you have a specific event that you're with or you work with multiple events, who do you want on that planning team? Who are those agencies or groups that you typically reach out to as part of your planning team? I'll give you a minute or two here to throw an answer or two up on the board, and then we'll kind of compare it with the list that we've got curated. Actually got us right away. I don't know. Are they just buttering us up? I like the answer.
I got a bit, I'm stumped on the acronym. RSSUS, RSSRUS.
I had to go to this one right here. I'm still loading. Long time.
Yeah. I think we've hit a pretty good list here right off the bat. Is there RSSRUS? Is that just a typo or is that an actual acronym that we're missing on?
Password to get in.
Oh, that's the passcode. There we go.
That explains it all. Good eye, Chris.
I didn't put it in there, but I saw the two.
So a lot of good ones up here from some of the obvious with the law enforcement, EMS, EMA. We've got city government in there, administration, Parks and Rec, Public Works, a lot of key agencies that we would identify in there. Does you see anything that stands out to you that's
No, I really like the fact that you included a lot of those partners that are non-traditional. We always talk about law enforcement. We always talk about fire and medical services and things like that. But it's great to see that you're planning with those other organizations as well. This is a basic list that we have for having the right team at the table. So as you're planning your events, this is really focused or geared more toward those event planners. We deal a lot with special events around the area, things like the Arts Festival was one that was here recently that we're working with very closely. Pride is another big event that we help with every year. Ironman, those kind of things. So this is the core group that we bring together initially, and it always expands out from there. So a lot of those groups that you included in what you assessed as a necessary group absolutely need to be included.
That's one of the things I was going to say. It's often, I think, that you get to the first or even second meeting sometime and you don't have your complete team there, not because you haven't done your due diligence, but because it's very easy to get into that first meeting. And one of the best questions you can ask is, who's not here that needs to be here? There's almost always something that's going to come up that you haven't thought of, or when you talk about having some of the event staff or maybe the vendors that are coming in, they may have special requests or special needs that they either expect or need to pull off an event that maybe aren't top of mind. So it's very common that you'll get in a meeting or two in and say, hey, we need to loop in another group, or maybe we're going to the footprint is going to expand and we need another jurisdiction in here. This is a list that can always grow as you go on through it. And kind of, if you stop at a couple points there and ask, have we thought of everyone? Is there someone that's missing? It's very easy to go back and add on to that group.
As you say that too, one of the groups that we always include, and we're always reminded of it every spring, National Weather Service, because they play a big part in every group and we left them off our list. So it's easy to do. We can always add them in at further meetings.
So once you've got your planning team together and you start to set out on putting this event plan together, kind of the first step we want to look at is our risk and threat assessment. So when we're talking about getting a good risk management strategy put together here, we got to look at kind of three different things here. We want to look at what are the threats, how vulnerable are they, or are we to that threat, and what's the consequence if this threat comes to pass? And you can put those three together into basically a formula, into a matrix, and you can end up with a threat or a rating for each of those threats you can go on through. And that can start to inform how your planning process needs to go. You can prioritize what is something that is important to our event. What's maybe a threat here that, yeah, we've thought about it. It's maybe not as big of a priority. We can push that until a little bit later date, or maybe we've got a way that we can work around that. But we can go through and rate those threats by how vulnerable we are to them, what the likelihood of them occurring are, and what that consequence would be. So our next question, if you've got your poll still up there, is: have you ever completed a formal risk assessment for your event, whether it's your event or another event that you've been part of? Have you gone through this process before? Simple yes or no question.
Well, those are coming in. Brett's included on the slide deck a series of things that'll be potentially helpful for you. And there are a lot of resources that are out there for doing risk assessments. So some of the tools that we use as far as rating those threats that are out there are going to be included in the slide deck. That's going to come out electronically after we're done today. So take advantage of some of those free tools that are out there. And we'll explain more about that in a little bit.
So we're pretty much right on 50-50 on if we actually go through this step or not. Now, a lot of times I think we kind of, in the back of your mind, what the main threats are that we face kind of every day in here. But it's always a good exercise just to kind of go through that and throw it out to your planning team. See what it is that you haven't thought of, what somebody else has thought of, and then start to get those opinions on how likely or what the priority of those are. And there's not a set answer to this. We're not looking to say, oh no, this should absolutely be your number one threat. It's something you can go through with your group and begin to kind of assign those numbers and see what the average are. Take the temperature of your planning team and see where those threats kind of line up. And that starts to maybe shake some of those maybe preconceived notions that we might have, or break us out of some of the comfort zone, things that we feel like we've gone through the motions on them before. It hasn't been a problem, and we can kind of let our guard down a little bit that way. So when we talk about identifying those threats, going through and making that list, there's a couple different things that you consider. We start with maybe natural or environmental considerations, weather, time of year, what are the things that could go wrong naturally. We've got our human-made threats, whether it's an intentional threat, some sort of act of terrorism or violence, or is it something that could be unintentional? How vulnerable are we to some sort of accident? How exposed is our event to something that could go wrong, whether that is something that's planned or intentional, or unfortunately just by a victim of circumstance. So we said the three different pieces that go into our score. Again, our probability, how likely is this threat? The consequence actually kind of breaks down into its own different buckets there. The consequence could be something that goes to life safety. It could be something that goes to property damage, or it could be something that is damage to the event, either in something that's going to shut down the event, make it unable to continue, or it could be reputation that we're looking at. And then the final one is how prepared are we? This goes into our vulnerability. Do we have a contingency for this? Maybe rain is a threat and we are pretty vulnerable to it, but is it really going to end the event? If you're the iCubs, yeah, it's gonna end your day, right? If we get a lot of rain. But if you're the Mud Run, I don't know. Maybe it's a positive. It's just there are things in there that as you kind of go through them, you can look at them and they may start off as a threat, but when you think about it, you're like, we actually have a contingency for this, or we could move this there, and maybe it will mess with some things financially. Maybe it will, maybe it won't, but it can reveal themselves maybe as a lower priority than you might have started, or they could sneak up the other direction. So Dutch, how do we buy down some of this risk? What are the things we can do?
Yeah, when we talk about buying down risk, we talk about how do we mitigate things? How do we make it less impactful for our event when we look at those threats? There's several things that you can do. One of the things is you can make your event less attractive so people don't come. Probably not your best option, right? That is something that when we talk to businesses about this, they try to make their business less recognizable. So it's less of an attractive thing for a bad guy, right? That's probably not what we're going to try to do. But we can do some things through planning, training, exercise, testing our plans, finding those gaps, identifying places that we can make improvements in our security posture that are all going to buy down that risk a little bit. So a lot of those things, just being here today helps buy down what that risk is. The more training that we do, if you identify maybe active shooter as one of your threats, having your staff attend active shooter training so they understand what they can do in case of an event like that helps buy down that risk. The more training, the more exercises we can do, practicing ahead of time so we build some muscle memory. All of those things are key to establishing a good security posture. One of the things, if we can't buy down all risk, right? We're always going to have some level of risk that exists. When we get to that point, we can look at insurance. Insurance helps us. I'm not an insurance agent, by the way, but that can help us buy down some of that risk too, at least take the onus off of our organization or our event. So those are some ways you can do it. When we identify those security gaps, we can identify things like, can we add fencing or can we add physical structures that help reduce the risk? So all of that is part of that planning process.
Having the right team involved, this is where we can plug our efforts as well. When you have the right team involved, you can start to get some of that risk bought down just from having the right players at the table. Dutch mentioned the National Weather Service. If you're involved, you work through Polk County EMA. We work with the National Weather Service. We can get what they call their decision support service set up, where we can get notifications to your specifications. If you've got a public safety component or public safety involved in monitoring your event or providing security or first aid to your event, we can get them connected with the National Weather Service, and we can get you a time delay on storms. If you need 30 minutes to evacuate, you need 40 minutes, whatever it is. We can get you those lightning notifications. We can get you wind if you've got lots of rigging, tents, things that need to be secured. Having the right partners involved can start to get you connections to some of these other services and availability that can give you that heads up that will allow you to go forward even at less than ideal conditions, but know when you get to the stopping point. Another question for you. What is something that you have done or implemented recently to an event or to some of your plans to reduce risk? Something that you've maybe changed at an event or from how you've done things historically? Any good ideas out there that you've done to improve the safety posture at your event? Vehicle barriers. This is these are popular. We just had them up at the Drake Relays. More kits around all the time.
Yep.
And they're really effective. Badged entrances, vendor insurance, that's a good one. Having drones, unified command, law enforcement presence. maps with evacuation routes and location of key emergency partners. Big part of the planning process there that can get done. I see a lot of perimeter control here with our badges, with check-in desks, with specific entry and exit points. It can be hard with a lot of our large open area events to figure out how to secure that. But it's good you guys got that top of mind.
I see a lot of familiar faces in the room. How many of you have gone through when we have a big event in Polk County, we do a joint event action plan. And we bring together a lot of agencies into our room so that we can plan together. How many of you have actually been part of that process? I see a few hands going up, but one of the things that the end result is we call it a JEAP, the Joint Event Action Plan. And it includes a lot of the things that you guys have mentioned here, those maps of the event, phone numbers, contact information, all of that stuff comes out as an end product that we can provide to our partners that are part of that planning process. So if you're ever interested in seeing some of that stuff, let us know. We're happy to get you examples of some of those products that we use.
So as we kind of continue in on our steps here, after we've gone through our risk threat assessment, we've kind of got our vulnerability set up here. We know we've kind of decided what our list is, what the order is, how we evaluate those vulnerabilities that exist. And what we've got labeled here at the bottom is just some common for consideration. And I think it's reflected in our last poll question here. Open perimeter or easy access. What have we got in terms of temporary structures, be it staging, rigging, video boards, light boards, tents, things like that. High crowd bottlenecks or density, entry and exit points, choke points there, and ADA challenges. And what I kind of noticed with this is a lot of these are interconnected. If we've got a lot of open perimeter or easy access, and we want to buy that down, we start to put up some fencing or different barricades there, we might start to potentially create bottlenecks or entry or exit points that could be a bit more of a problem. Do we encroach on some of the accessibility challenges as we try to tighten up some of these others? So there's some give and take here that as you go through it, it's going to maybe create some other issues that you have to work through. But this is why if you start off with a good planning process and do this from the start, you can evaluate, okay, what are our trade-offs? What is that risk that we have to live with and figure out another way around it? And what can we tighten up without completely messing up everything else? Our site security access control, again, that having a boundary that we can defend, that's kind of our first most important way to secure this open environment. If we can set up that clear boundary, we've talked about fencing, the temporary walls, our meridian barrier systems, get hit a lot of those here in the last couple of slides. You guys were on it in terms of moving toward the staffed entry and exit gates, having those badges in place. How about the screening environment for patrons or visitors in terms of what can be brought in for prohibited items? That's always a trick, right? Because that's got to be promoted pretty well beforehand, or you're going to have a whole bunch of people up there who've got stuff. They're going to get irritated if they didn't know they couldn't bring that in, and it can slow things down. It can create some interesting situations, but it is something that we always encourage, whether it's the screening procedures or sometimes if we'll get to some of the mass notification ahead of time, but some of the opt-in codes, things that we need to think about to advertise and promote before the event, kind of that know before you go stuff.
Yeah, some of the events too, the more controversial the event, the tighter, obviously, the processes we want to make. So this might not apply to every single event that's out there, but if you've got a controversial speaker coming in or a presidential candidate, some things like that, obviously we want to have tighter restrictions and controls on access. So the event type sometimes drives the strategies around it.
How do we keep it secure once we've kind of got our plan together? We've put things in place. We've got our setup. we've got to stay aware, right? We've got to stay vigilant. So there still needs to be monitoring, whether it is remote through drones, if you've got camera towers, something to provide some surveillance, or do we have folks going around kind of walking the perimeter, keeping an eye on things, driving around, doing some laps there. Going through some of the other trainings that we can offer from time to time. Again, keep an eye out for our emails, but we've had some cybersecurity for public infrastructure courses in the last year, but trying to recognize what that suspicious activity might be. What are the things to watch out for, whether it's a suspicious person, suspicious package, and know then what you should do in the event that you run into one of those things. The action, kind of what those next steps should be, that should be in our plan as we go through. What do we expect someone to do?
The reason patrols is in quotation marks up there is because it really depends on what threats you've identified. If the threats are basically weather threats, patrols might be monitoring the weather events and making sure that you've got a vigilant system for monitoring weather, maybe multiple sources for monitoring weather. It doesn't necessarily mean a physical patrol of your event. It really depends on what those threats that you've identified are.
For our crowd management, we have several different things that we can consider. We talked about it a little bit already with our entry or exit choke points in those gates. So that's something you got to think about when we start going through our planning process in our maps here. What's the layout of our venue going to look like? You know, where is the best place to put that entry and exit that can be controlled, but also we've got maybe the ability to open up extra gates or to allow a quick egress of people that are in there? Or how are we going to get extra response in? Do we have two ways in, two ways out, essentially? What's our process for getting people out, getting people in, and doing it in a timely manner? So that evacuation planning comes into control. Again, sticking to capacity limits, obviously, is going to be a key here. There are a lot of different ways that things can kind of go awry when it comes to moving a large amount of people quickly. So making sure that you've thought of these things, gone through it beforehand, really makes a big difference.
There are a lot of words on this slide, so I'm going to give Brett an F for this one. I'm just kidding. I did this slide. These are just ideas and suggestions. These are some of the best practices that exist from other events that we've seen around the country. Things to think about. It's just to get you thinking through some of the things you might want to look at for your events that you're having in your communities.
All right, the emergency action plan. This is kind of the finished product that comes out of this process. Through our risk assessment, our hazard vulnerability analysis, going through all the planning, at the end, what we want to come up with is an emergency action plan. So written plan for the event that has all those details and cool stuff. The response protocol for major incidents, like we talked about. What are we supposed to do if A, B, C? And the great thing about having a written plan is now that is something that can be shared amongst our partners that are going to be involved in carrying out this event. And it can actually be trained and exercised on, where we can get in a room, talk through a scenario, work through the plan, make sure everyone understands it. As the event grows, we get more time. Maybe we start to build this out into a bigger actual functional or full scale exercise where we actually get some people and walk through and physically do some of the pieces to respond to this. But having that plan in place until you've got it, it's written out, and you can share it and learn on it. There's not really a way to exercise it if this all just exists in theory. The other great part about having these plans and having them written down is it gives you the chance to set what your boundaries are, what your red lines are, what those action steps are, and have it agreed to beforehand. Especially if there's things that some people might be a little bit squishy about, or, do we really need to do this? Sometimes that's the weather the weather red lines, if it's got to be 35-mile-an-hour winds and these got to come down, if everyone's agreed to it and signed off on it, and you know who the authority is, who has the ability to call that, then when they say it, there's no discussion about it. If this is all left to, yeah, kind of, maybe, sort of, and then you have that discussion in a moment, now you're wasting seconds and minutes and putting people in danger. So our last question is, does your event have an actual written emergency plan? So I think we're narrowing in on 50-50 again. We'll have a couple of things here at the end of our slides that will get shared out with you, that will give you kind of some basic skeletons that you can play around with and work with, and be the basis if you're looking to start an emergency plan. It can be daunting because there's a lot of different pieces that go into it, from the security side of it, weather side of it, all sorts of different policies and avenues that this could go. So we've got several different pieces that you can use as a basis or a start, and kind of make your own and figure out what you need. Again, depending on what your event is, what the threats are, the size of your event, what you need or don't need, again, can be customized a bit, but definitely has that value to hold everyone to what the expectations are and set out who's got the responsibilities, who's got the authorities. All right. So some of the key scenarios that kind of come up in these plans, a lot of times, obviously, we saw it with your planning team ideas at the beginning. A lot of you had fire and EMS on first aid. Clearly, it's going to be something that is usually important for most of these large scale events. But not only figuring out where you're going to stage people that are going to be actively serving the event in terms of first aid, if it's an athletic competition or something where you're anticipating potential injuries as just part of the normal operation of the event. But what's your access to get additional resources in or something that's maybe unplanned?
There's kind of two extremes on this slide. What's the likelihood of having a medical emergency at any large event? Relatively high, right? I mean, it could be heart attacks, it could be heat, cold, whatever it might be. Likelihood is really high. What's the actual threat, the probability of having an active shooter at your event?
Low.
Yeah, very good. It's low, right? Across the country, we look at probably around 24 to 30 active shooter events in a year. Probability is very low. So why are these both things that always come up? Probability for those medical events is really high. We've got a plan for those because we know we're probably going to have some sort of medical event at our medical condition at our events. We've got a plan for those. Even though active shooters are really low, active killers are very low probability, the consequences are so high that that's one of those things that we've still got a plan for. Probability is very low, but if it does happen, consequences are going to be extremely high. So we still have to include that in our planning process. Frequently, we get asked to do a scenario that's related to an active shooter event. It's more of a test of things like evacuation plans. It's a test of triage points and understanding how we can get our medical personnel in and out. It's not so much the event. It's all those other things that play around the response that we're trying to test as a result of that.
And these are the things that again reveal themselves in that risk assessment at the beginning. Like Dutch just said, the probability of any one medical emergency is pretty high, but the consequence of that, again, not speaking personally, but to your event, not really going to interrupt the event if you've got everything set up the way that you would expect it to be. You can handle a medical emergency for the random patron that's there. But that score, that's why we have the several different layers to that score that help kind of bring to the surface what needs to be planned for, what can be pushed a little bit down the list. Communication and coordination is always going to be at the kind of top of mind for most of these planning ventures. It's always something that can be improved. Again, we want to make sure that even though you've got your event team or your planning team, it doesn't stop there. Once we get to the event, you still have to have that communication going all the way through. It's not just going to be who you identify as actually running your event. So how can you build those partnerships with your law enforcement, fire, EMS? Does this need an MOU or an MOA to outline, again, where we have those roles, responsibilities, expectations as part of that emergency action plan? What needs to be tacked on there to make sure everything can be accomplished as we've put it out in the plan. It goes into the things such as hiring off-duty law enforcement or any extra officials that you need for your event. And sometimes this is handled by vendors or the promotions that are coming in to put this event on. If it's just yourself, your venue or your city, these are things you need to think about. So it sometimes in that planning process, it's a negotiation with who you've got involved in there. But remember to think about that once you've planned the event, you still have to make sure this continues day of and through start to finish. ICS structure. How many here in the room are familiar with incident command system? Talk about that. Pretty good. We always like to stick as close to this as possible because it makes things so much easier to blend in with day-to-day operations. And if there is an incident or an event, as things come in, there's a clear structure for those responding resources to slide right into and work seamlessly with what's already been set up to run the event.
Yeah, very often, even on the private side of things, the event organizers will ask us to come in and basically just give a ICS overview. How are our response agencies going to respond? And we can explain the structure to them. It's a pretty quick briefing. So if you're interested in having something like that, please let us know.
It all goes back to helping identify who's in charge, who's got the authority, where does the buck stop with each of the different pieces to your event. Communications, interoperability. Again, this is something a lot of times we might have our own radios. Can you talk to your response agencies on your radios? If you can't, do you have an extra radio you can give to them? Or can you just go stand next to them? Old fashioned way, right? I've got my radio. I can turn wherever we've got a command post set up. Figure out those ways to make sure that you're able to communicate directly with who needs to be involved in that response or in that plan. Beyond radio backup, do you have other systems, whether that's text messaging apps? So what have you got set up here to communicate with each other? We've hinted at this a little bit. Who's got the final say on the decisions? Again, whether that's weather, some sort of incident, suspicious package, criminal threat. Who's got the ability to make the call to shut the event down, to make a change, to call that audible, activate the contingency plans, make sure you know who has those authorities and how they get activated. If I don't have the authority and I see something that might need that attention, how do I get that to the right people?
This is something that comes up every single event that we have is how do we communicate better? It's always in the after action reports of something went wrong with communications at some point in time. The more you can spend on this, the more time you can spend on this in the pre-planning, the better your event's going to go, the more smoothly it's going to go.
One other thing that you can think about when you put these together, again, this is another thing that can be a matrix. The mass notification, your emergency notification, or even just kind of event communications. you list off some of the different methods that you have, whether it's PA, signage, your social media. You've got text alerts, with the Alert Iowa program through EMA. All of these kind of serve different masters or different messaging importance levels. So, and who might be reached by them. What you can do on a PA or how long that takes is something different than how long it takes to get information sent offsite to someone with keys to the Alert Iowa that it gets put in and sent back. So thinking about what types of messages fit with what system and the timeliness of all of those is something to plan out ahead of time. So you've got that matrix and you know how we can get those from one to the other. If it's something that's really super important, you got to act on now. Who's got the ability to get those things on premises that can be done right away? And things that have to go offsite and go through a bit of a process, you have to plan a little bit more for, are those immediate life safety or are these follow-up messages that we want to push out?
We talked about this before too. The use of ICS and the structured National Incident Management System helps walk us through some of the importance of communication and how we can better communicate within those organizations. It talks about the vulnerabilities that happen as a result of poor communication. So again, when we are helping organize an event or plan for an event, we really try to stress the use of that joint information center and how we share messages, and the messages that go out are what incident command needs to go out during that time.
What we want to do again with our staff and training of those staff or volunteers really again ties back to having that written plan, knowing what it is that we have or the needs of people that we're bringing in, whether it's the Boy Scout troop that's going to volunteer and man the gates. Are we bringing in a vendor to do security or gates? The different levels of who we've got, whether it's a commercial, again, volunteer, that all plays in here. But we want to make sure that you've got the right amount of people to accomplish your goals. But we also get this done in time that we can train people to the plan. Not just they come in, oh yeah, we've done this before somewhere else. Yeah, but we need you to know what our plan is, what we want to do if we encounter this sort of situation. So having training for all of your staff roles, for your volunteers, and then having briefings leading up to the event, day of, morning of, it's multiple day, going through those, kind of having that 10 or 15 minute kind of roll call at the beginning of the day really is going to make things a lot better for you. After action reviews at the end of the event, once it's all done, bringing that team back together, bringing those players in, the outside agencies that helped out. Again, things come up during the event that maybe you didn't plan for. Maybe you did. Maybe the plan just didn't work the way you thought it was going to, or the way it did when you trained it or exercised it. These are all things that pop up. Some of them you're going to catch in the heat of the moment, and some of them you may not really know about until afterwards. And that's where this after action meeting comes in. Something might have gone wrong or didn't work the way it was, but it got handled. Maybe it didn't get back up to leadership in the heat of the moment. But when you have this event, you bring everyone in, think about, hey, I remember we had this incident and it kind of messed this thing up, and this is how we handled it. And it's a chance to go over that and say, okay, was this something we missed in the planning, or is it just something that, there wasn't really a way to foresee it, but now it's another data point that we have for next year or next time, next event, that we can make things better. If it was something that just didn't work as efficiently as we thought it was, okay, how can we rebuild this, do this in another way that makes sense? So to kind of wrap it up here and look at some of the next steps, again, the foundation, again, for the effective procedures here, again, that risk assessment is where we start off and we prioritize our threats, how vulnerable the event might be, what the consequences to that, come up with a score, we can prioritize it, start to plan on through, looking at things like the secure perimeter access control, crowd management, emergency plan. And again, the coordination between agencies, that after action report really leads us into building this plan that can go forward and be a living document.
When we say a living document, we meet frequently as we plan these events. So we know things are going to change. There's going to be road construction that pops up. There's going to be weather issues that come up. So the more that you can meet, the more frequently, the more predictable those meetings are, the better planning is going to go for y'all.
These are kind of the links that we'll share out with you. Again, I'll have it in your email probably later today or tomorrow with our slides and the recording of the presentation here. But one of the tools that we use a lot with some of our assessments, I'll let Dutch talk about the first one here, is the Kaiser Permanente tool, which can go really super in depth. When you first see it, you'll probably be like, oh my goodness, but
the reason I refer people to Kaiser Permanente, it's a tool that's used by hospitals and the medical community a lot. It's a really well done tool. And it weights things differently. There's algorithms that go into things like probability. Probability carries more weight than some of the planning pieces. It does a really good job of breaking down all those areas that we described as part of your threat rating. So it's a really good tool. It's got a drop down of every conceivable, I won't say that, but darn near every conceivable threat that's out there. So you can pick and choose the threats that are available or that might be in your community that you have to plan for. It'll rate those and it'll give you a prioritized scale at the end of it or a score at the end of it that you can use to help identify which things are a bigger priority than some of those other things. It's a really good tool. It can be used at any event or any facility, basically. It doesn't necessarily have to be used for medical facilities.
And it's something you can go in and make it your own again, just because it's there. There will be stuff that doesn't necessarily always apply. So don't get too spooked if you see something that looks a little bit more. National Weather Service has a worksheet for you that's on our website that can really help you go throughout building a weather annex to your plan. Whether that is what you need for evacuation times, stepping through what your contingencies might be, but also kind of has a nice grid matrix at the back that you can break down by location if you've got an event that you might have. Again, maybe like we talked about with the stages or rigging that might have to shut down at a certain wind speed, but other portions of your event may be able to continue. So you can break those down by who's in charge of the different areas. Go back to our ICS schedule or ICS org chart, and we can highlight these by function or by area of what applies to them, whether it's wind, rain, lightning, and how that changes different portions of the event. What needs to be shut down, what can continue, what needs to go into some sort of action stage. So it's all very helpful. And again, it's another thing that you can take pages from, take what you need, make it your own, and build it into a great plan. So with that, we got about 10 minutes left. If there are any questions, comments, anything you want, we've got 10 minutes left for you. Otherwise, we've got our evaluation sheets. If you can fill one of those out and give us some tips on what you'd like to see going forward. Again, we'd like to tailor these trainings to what you have interest in and what's needed out there in the community. So feel free to leave us a few notes there. But with that, we'll take any questions if you got them.
Good.
What is your opinion about having like a general emergency preparedness plan versus like event specific? Or can you kind of say like at what point does an event get big enough that it requires a specific plan that's separate from your general one?
Having a general plan is a great place to start. As a matter of fact, we're working with a really large venue right now to help them develop basically that general plan. When you need to start consideration for a special event planning is when you look at things that are going to tax your resources. Usually that general plan that you've got takes into account all the things you have internally to react to an event. But if you've got that event that you're going to call in outside resources, maybe activate 2080 agreements or memorandums of understanding with outside agencies to bring in additional resources, you might want to consider development of an action plan.
And having that sort of larger general plan, if you have a larger facility or venue, it saves some of your work because it's not, you don't throw that all out when it comes to the event. You can refer back with your event plan to what you have set up generally, and that event, what you have to develop then for the event just becomes one of those additional add-ons that we've got. So a lot of your work can be done already if you've got that in place.
We have actually several subject matter experts in the room from law enforcement, fire and EMS that we're not ashamed to divert those questions to those guys too. So if you've got questions for them, let us know and we'll pick on people. All right.
All right, well, thank you for joining us. Next month, we are going to have some folks from the State Insurance Board and insurance fraud. We're going to go through some of the common pitfalls after storms into recovery that have cropped up here over the last couple of years. Not just fraud, but some of the issues in terms of underinsurance or even just some lessons from Greenfield, and I think at Tumwa they had a few examples of what can happen with inherited properties and things that can fall through the cracks insurance wise that leave people really hurting when it comes time to recovery. So that will be our May Lunch and Learn, and in June we're going to have a presentation on the Legionnaires outbreak and cooling towers and some best practices there. So those will be coming out to here in the next couple of weeks in your email. That will take us into the middle of the summer, actually. Geez, end of June by the time. So thank you for coming today and being a great audience, and see you again soon.